please join me in welcoming our presenters, which is Ryan Kelly from Baseline Energy Analytics. We also have Marlon Wauchope from Energy Nova Scotia. We have Sarah Campbell from Clear Result. And lastly, but not least, Joey Kim from MYSA. So please, all yours.
Thank you for that introduction. So hi and welcome. My name is Marlon Wauchope. I work for Efficiency One. And today we're going to be talking about Efficiency One's residential demand response program called EcoShift. And we present this along with our partners, Nova Scotia Power and Clear Result. So a little disclaimer here. Efficiency does not give incentives in donuts or toilet paper, so I just want to make that part clear. But yeah, we'll dive in here. So yeah, my name's Marlon. I'm the Manager of Research and Innovation at Efficiency One. My background is in industrial automation and then more recently agricultural technology. So before joining E1, was involved with some robotics in agriculture, and through the research and innovation team, we've focused on a number of different pilots and research spanning demand response, especially market transformation, distributed energy resources, and strategic electrification. I'll hand it over to Sarah to introduce herself.
Thank you. Geez, you're tall. I'll be.
If you like.
Sarah Campbell. I've been working in the energy efficiency and energy transition space for almost 15 years now. I'm a program manager at Clear Results. Yeah, I'm super excited to be part of this program. All right. Pass it over to Joey.
Sarah? Hi everyone, my name is Joey. I'm from MYSA Thermostat, and I've been with MYSA for about 4 months now, and prior to that I worked as a product manager at a company called Uplight. So I've been in more or less the same industry for a while now. And I'll pass it back to you, Ryan.
I'm Ryan Kelly, president at Baseline Energy Analytics. We work with industry groups, government, not-for-profits, program administrators like Efficiency One. And I, in a former life, worked at Efficiency One on this program. And so I jumped up the opportunity to talk about demand response. This is something that can be a really powerful tool for utilities to navigate the energy transition, to facilitate electrification and decarbonization. So happy to chat about that today. Back to you.
Thanks, Ryan. So today we'll be talking about, we'll start with an introduction on demand response, so what it is and why it's important. Next, we'll dive into EcoShift, some of the program guidelines and the eligible technologies. From there, we'll jump into high-level outcomes, including enrollment pathways and some of the metrics we use to gauge participation. Then we'll dive into some more of the details around a couple of load profile examples for some participants in EcoShift and what their event participation looked like from last season. And then finally, we'll jump into some lessons learned and sort of a summary. So just a definition to start off. So demand response is essentially when during a time of peak demand, an energy user reduces or shifts their electricity use outside of that peak demand period. And one of the analogies we like to use is rush hour traffic. So you can imagine peak demand as rush hour traffic. If you wanted to shift your commute, for example, you could do so by leaving early, leaving late. If you wanted to reduce, you could go ahead and ride a bicycle, take a scooter, take a bus, something along those lines. So that's a little analogy. So here are the main two forms of demand response. So load curtailment or load reduction on the left. So the idea here is, and Ed Cullinan spoke to this a little bit earlier, what we're trying to do is reduce peak demand because it's good for the grid and helps energy users save money as well. So these are essentially the two main strategies. So you're reducing load or you're shifting load, which ends up reducing your overall peak. And when you scale this up for a residential program, you start to see a pretty significant impact on the peak energy demand in the grid. So why do we care? There's essentially three key benefits here. So the first is stability of the grid. So by balancing energy supply and demand, it allows essentially the utility to better manage the strain that peak demand applies and manage any sort of power outages. And then as well, second key benefit is around cost savings. So this is both for the utility as well as the energy user. So essentially, during times of peak demand, it's very expensive for example, a utility to install new infrastructure to meet that increasing demand. And usually through incentives or time-varying rate programs, which we'll go into in just a minute, participants that participate in these demand response programs can receive an incentive and get some cost savings there. And then finally, in terms of greenhouse gas reduction, many utilities have to rely on fossil fuel power plants to meet these peak demands. So by participating in demand response program, whether that's industrial, commercial, or residential, we're reducing the reliance on those plants. And as we continue to see increasing electrification, demand response program is a really effective way to manage that increase in electricity demand on the grid. So here you can see a pretty typical demand response program timeline in terms of steps. So, an energy user would sign up for a DR program. So this could be industrial, commercial, residential. The demand surges, and in our case here in Nova Scotia, we're a winter peaking jurisdiction. So you'd see these peaks in the wintertime, mostly due to heating loads. Next, your participant would reduce or shift their load. So by means of one of the many technologies that we'll demonstrate soon, but essentially you're looking at smart thermostats, EVs, home batteries, and I think that's pretty much it. There might be one more that I'm forgetting. And then the next step is you're reducing your electricity demand. These demand response participants are reducing their demand, which helps stabilize the grid. And then finally, your participant gains a profit either through an incentive or donuts or toilet paper in some cases. So finally here, we've got, I just wanted to cover a little bit about Nova Scotia Power's rate pilot program called Critical Peak Pricing. So there's a few different time-varying pricing pilots that they offer. But this one relates very closely to EcoShift. So on the bottom left there, you can see during a short period, there's a time where, excuse me, prices are much higher for the electricity consumer. So during that time, it's kind of like the stick method in a carrot and stick model where you're penalizing an electricity user for using a lot of demand during that time, but then you get a better rate during the rest of the day and actually in the summertime as well. So that's one type of demand response program. And then shortly here, we'll dive into EcoShift, which is Efficiency One's demand response program, where a participant would receive an enrollment incentive. So just by signing up a device, they would receive a small incentive. And then Again, by participating in the events during the season, they would receive some more money at the end of the season. So, to give a quick overview of EcoShift, it runs from the beginning of December to the end of February. The events are called by Nova Scotia Power, so they can forecast when that peak demand is coming, and we give the participants a day ahead notification that this event is coming. So there's up to 12 demand response events per season. I think last season we saw around 10 for EcoShift. And the periods are typically up to 4 hours, and they run from, at least in Nova Scotia, 7 to 11 a.m. or 5 to 9 p.m. So in terms of technologies, so we've got smart thermostats that cover mini split heat pumps, of course, and baseboard electric, as well as some EVs, home batteries, and the hot water controllers was the one I missed. Mini split heat pumps, we just integrated last year for the first season. And I believe we're one of the first jurisdictions in North America to include mini split heat pumps in a demand response program, which is pretty exciting. So in terms of when a DR event is called, like how does the load reduce or shift? Like how are we performing demand response? There's a few different ways. We'll focus primarily on the smart thermostats here. So to maintain comfort, often we'll do a preheat 30 minutes before the event starts. And then the temperature set point will be reduced by up to 2 degrees Celsius. For some of these other technologies, you can see, for EVs, you're pausing charging as long as the battery stated charge is above 50%. EV chargers, there's not a lot of those in the program yet, but they basically recharge at a reduced rate. And then for home batteries, you're discharging, so usually to the home or potentially back to the grid if it's net metered. And then for hot water controllers, there's a system where essentially the homeowner won't detect any loss of hot water, and you're essentially curtailing or reducing the power draw during the demand response event. So I'll pass it over at this point to Sarah to talk about the high-level outcomes.
Okay, so where do our participants come from? The first thing I want to mention is that these numbers are as of the end of our second season, so that would be the end of February of this year. We have quite a few more devices that have enrolled in the program since then. I think we're at almost 16,000 devices in total. So keep that in mind when we look at the numbers. There are two different routes that people can join the program. There's the bring your own device path, which people already own those devices. We're talking thermostats specifically right now, but either own their own devices or they've purchased them recently and they want to enroll the device to take advantage of the incentive that they're getting for enrollment in the program. As of the end of February, participants in that second season, we have around 2,000 people who came in through that bring your own device route. Just the similar count in heat pump controllers and thermostats that were controlling heat pumps, and 6,600 baseboard thermostats. The other route that people can come in is via the EPI, or Efficient Product Installation Program. That's a program that is also delivered or offered by Efficiency Nova Scotia. For that program, they have been installing thermostats for quite some time for the purposes of EcoShift as of, I believe, the end of, or the fall of, what year are we in? Fall of 2024, they began a requirement that those people who are receiving the heat pump controllers or the baseboard thermostats would also need to enroll in this program. In both routes, those enrolling, even the people who receive the free thermostats, are also receiving enrollment incentives for the devices that they enroll into the program, and they could qualify for participation incentives as long as they participate in the events throughout the course of the winter DR season. If they bring additional devices into the program after they enroll, they could get additional incentives if they haven't reached their incentive max. So there is some motivation to buy even more devices to control the rest of your household. which is pretty essential, particularly for those who heat primarily with baseboards. There are a lot of baseboards within a house for electric baseboards. Okay. Participant distribution. They're everywhere. We have people from all over the province who are participating in the program. There is, of course, a concentration within the Halifax region. One thing I do want to point out, which is sort of hard here to notice, I recognize that, but for percentage participation in the program in the top 10, there is not a single region that's on the Halifax Peninsula or some of the supporting communities there. So like Fairview, places like that are not within the top 10 as far as participation numbers in the program. The participants tend to come from more suburban or even semi-rural areas, not necessarily those urban areas such as you see on the peninsula. Finally, for the devices. So these numbers are broken into two different sections. The top are the actual controlled devices that we have in the house. The bottom is the self-reported numbers that people report when they enroll in the program. There's a few optional questions they can fill out. We've divided the houses into houses where we control the heat pumps and where we don't control heat pumps within the household. Of those households, there's about a 50-50 split. We tend to control slightly more devices in the non-heat pump homes where we're not controlling heat pumps. But as you can see, as far as primary heating types, where they've reported it, of course, the heat pump houses report heat pumps as their primary heating source, but over 50% of those houses where we don't have control of the heat pumps are also reporting heat pumps as the primary heating source within their home. For secondary heating types, there's a bit more of a spread. So for the heat pump homes, there's, of course, baseboards, and those electric baseboards as backup. But interestingly, maybe people see this in the field quite a bit, but there tends to be more non-electric heating sources for secondary sources in those heat pump homes versus the homes where we're not controlling the heat pumps. And those where we do not control heat pumps, there's just more likelihood that there's not a secondary source. And those secondary sources tend to be electric. All right, I'll pass it over to Ryan.
All right. So if Sarah gave a high-level overview, literally looking at the province and where everyone is, I want to zoom in, go very low level, pick out a few examples. It's not going to be a statistically representative sample, but I find it's helpful to look under the hood and kind of understand what's going on at that level. So I'm going to focus on a few of the key drivers of those low-level results, and I think these are probably the top three. The first being occupant behavior. So how many people are in the home? Do they like it warm? Do they like it cool? Do they set a thermostat on a schedule? Do they manually change it when they want to? The types of equipment present in the home. So you could have a mini split, you could have baseboards, you could have a central heat pump, central oil furnace or boiler, wood stove. You could have all of those things. And then the third item, control strategies. A lot of homes do have all of those things, and all of those things do not talk to each other. You might have a mini split and baseboards operating on independent thermostats, and so that becomes really relevant when you're talking about coordinating curtailment events in a program like this. And so I'm going to look through some real data. So we're going to look at meter level interval data. So the electricity meter on the home, 15-minute interval data for a few participating homeowners, fictionalized for the purpose of this presentation. And like I said, this isn't a statistical representation. I've more picked bookends. These are the extremes of what a really good participant looks like and maybe a not so good participant. So the first one is the Clockwork Cohens. As the name implies, they run their house like a Swiss watch. They follow a strict schedule. They have a thermostat set in every room with a setback while they're away at work. And we know a little bit when you participate in the EcoShift program, you have to register each individual device. So we know they have two heat pumps. One is in the garage, one is in a secondary suite. They have 5 baseboards. 2 are in bathrooms, 1 is in a bedroom, 1's in the main entryway, 1's in the living room. They have an electric vehicle, and they're on Nova Scotia Power's CPP rate, which Marlon mentioned earlier. Basically, you get a low rate most of the year, very high rate during these peak events. And these programs dovetail nicely because EcoShift basically automates it for them. They don't have to curtail. All of these devices do it automatically. But as Sarah mentioned, we don't necessarily know everything that's in the home. They could have more heat pumps, they could have more baseboards. These are just the smart devices that they have enrolled. So that's some important context. If we look at their day-to-day load shapes, and don't worry so much about the values, but this is like, I think, a second week in January, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and they have a pretty consistent load shape. They have a peak that occurs in the evening, and that's likely attributed to their EV charging when they get home from work. And in general, like I said, very consistent because they do have all of these thermostats set on a schedule. And if you look at a demand response event, which they do participate in reliably, and if you look at an evening in particular, that's where they have a lot of potential because in their case, the EV is charging quite a bit. As Ed mentioned this morning and quantified, 30% of the problem is EVs, but he also pointed out that they're very flexible. So this is a big load that can be easily moved. And so an EV can charge overnight, no problem, and be ready to go in the morning. And that's primarily what you're seeing in this curtailment. So the green is the actual demand in the home in kilowatts. The dotted red is the baseline. And without getting into a lot of detail, it's basically what they would have consumed had there not been a demand response event. And so the area between that dotted red line and the green line is the curtailment. And that's about 12 kilowatts. And it's what you would expect to see from like a level 2 charger and maybe a few mini splits curtailing at that time. And then if you look at a morning event, it's not nearly as dramatic, but you do still see some curtailment. I think it's in the order of 2 megawatts. And with this house, they, like I said, they have 5 electric baseboards and 2 mini splits. And they have their thermostats set such that the mini splits are held constant around 21 degrees, and the baseboards are really just backup. I think they had them set at 15 or 16. So the curtailment that you're seeing here is primarily mini splits. You turn off them, they're not active. The baseboards were never active, and you kind of ride out that 4-hour event and then comes back on. Next, we have the Fickle Fletchers. They are not as regimented as the Clockwork Cohens. They change the temperature when they want to change the temperature. When they're hot, they turn it down. When they're cold, they turn it up. So their day-to-day load profile, actually, before I get into that, their customer profile is that they have a single mini split enrolled. So they don't have as complex a setup. We also know they declared when they joined the program that they have supplementary wood heating, and they also have an unknown electric supplementary source of heating. And their day-to-day load profile is not quite as consistent. Generally, they have an evening peak, but it kind of shifts around when it is. Their load tends to ramp up around 7 or 8 a.m., but not necessarily consistently. And they don't always participate. This is what non-participation looks like, basically. So you have your red dotted line that's pretty closely following their actual demand. So you can see they opted out of this event. Normally, if someone did curtail, you would see a sharp decline. It would flatten out, and then you'd see a peak after the event, which we call the snapback. So it's when your equipment turns back online, and it's usually working harder than it normally would, and you get a bit of spike at the end there. And I think it was Michael this morning was talking about unintended consequences. This is a really good example. Sometimes it doesn't go as you predicted it, and we have limited visibility. So we don't know all of the equipment that's in the home. In their case, they had a mini split enrolled, but it could be the case that that mini split's curtailed and they had electric baseboards that came on while it was curtailed. For all we know, they could have been cooking a roast at 7 a.m. Like, it could be some other electric load, but you have limited visibility. And I think Marlon's going to talk to this later, but it becomes more and more important to coordinate the different heating equipment and capture as much of it as possible if you want to maximize that curtailment and not create those unintended consequences where one system goes off and another picks up. And I'm going to pass it to Joey.
Thanks, Ryan. All right, so I'm going to kick off the section where we discuss the most interesting part, lessons learned. And before doing so, I wanted to add a bit of context for the audience, how we control load when we talk about mini-split heat pumps. So at MYSA, the company that one of the OEMs that Efficiency Nova Scotia work with, we provide not only smart thermostat that works with high voltage baseboard, we also provide what's called MYSA for mini split heat pumps and AC that is essentially acting as a smart remote IR remote controller for those devices. So we're pretty compatible for, we say, like above 85% of the brands in the market, and that's how we let the participants to participate in the DR programs. So the first challenge that we saw at the first season when we did the mini split DR for the first time is supporting users in all sort of mode settings. So some users like to do heating or just simply cooling in the summer, but others who seek more comfort like to set their devices in auto mode. And when we talk about auto mode and controlling mini split heat pump, it has an essentially one set point. And then there is a risk that we know when we trigger offset for the demand response in the winter, it could lower the set point of the auto mode and unintentionally withdraw more energy by going into active cooling mode, which we all didn't want to do during the DR event. So that was one challenge. And another potential challenge that we had in mind was when we try to send signal persistently, despite the auto mode, we didn't want the device to go into the ping pong, like heating and cooling mode, potentially impacting the devices. So for the first mini split DR season, we said, okay, let's just support the heating mode and see how the season goes and look at the data. And this is the high-level program participation data that we gather at the end of the season. And you can see, starting from the right side or left side from your side, we have around 9,000 baseboard enrolled, 3,000 heat pump enrolled, and then you'll see the funnel getting smaller and smaller, right? So of those devices that enroll, when we call the demand response, about 84% of the baseboards responded, as in they decreased the temperature, but we see only 40% of the mini splits responded for the DR events in the first season. And then when we honor the opt-out, where participants actively ask us, I don't want to participate in this program anymore, we're left with about 35% for heat pumps and 70-something% that I can't read from here for the baseboard. So it's clear that there is a higher skid rate for the mini split, which led us to believe, okay, the big delta between mini split and baseboard is that mini split has larger range of modes, that we only supported heating mode, so that led us to prioritize fixing this problem for the next season. So what we came up with at MYSA, we basically wanted to support all modes moving forward, so we implemented on our cloud side where we received the signal from DR, and then before sending the signal to our users with the devices, what we do is we first check what mode users have before the DR, and then in the beginning, we temporarily switch them to the right heating or cooling mode, depending on the season, and run the DR event and then reset back to the mode that they were initially in. So this way we don't impact users' preference, but also drive meaningful load shift by honoring all types of modes moving forward. And so we're excited to see the impact of this enhancement, which is live as of last month. So we're ready for the next heating season, and we're eager to report back on the improved participation level. And I'll pass it back to Marlon for the other lessons learned.
So I just wanted to speak a bit to how we drove participation and what worked well. So I mentioned the day ahead notifications. We tried to also give participants a notification right before the event, but found in a lot of cases this created some confusion. So the day ahead, usually I think by 5 p.m., there's a notification that goes out to the DR program participants that lets them know there's an event happening the following day. So that was really successful. Also, some of our OEMs, they have apps where people can sign up directly for EcoShift. So that was a really great way to bring in people that maybe went to Costco, for example, had a program with MYSA where we were offering an E1 rebate, and then there was also a rebate through MYSA itself. So people could purchase a smart thermostat, they'd install it in their home, but they're not necessarily signed up for EcoShift. So getting that kind of cooperation between Efficiency Nova Scotia and the OEMs to get people signed up for the DR program so they can get extra incentives for participating in the DR season was really helpful. So just jump into some of the key takeaways here. So last season, as I said, was the first season we had mini splits in EcoShift. One of the things that we wanted to illustrate here is, as Joey mentioned, we saw reduced participation in the first season linked to auto mode, and we have a fix for that. So we're looking to see, we're expecting to see a large increase in participation from that. And I think as time goes on, you'll see mini split heat pumps start to crop up in other jurisdictions that are doing residential DR programs as well, because we certainly see the value from just even the first season. Next thing, Ryan talked about this, where when you're looking at AMI data or meter level data from a DR program participant, you want to see some reduction or some curtailment overall, right? So there's this challenge of we have some device level data that the customer, they enrolled maybe a smart thermostat, but we don't necessarily always have the full picture. So what we're working towards is trying to bring full curtailment down of their at the meter level. And one of the ways we can do that is by enrolling more of maybe the baseboards that they have in the home, or enrolling the mini split heat pumps as well as the baseboards, for example, if that's the heating sources they have. So by having more of those eligible devices, we can there's a better chance that we can actually curtail or reduce the participants' load during the demand response event. And then a couple more things here. So, I think this is something I've certainly seen with my family, and there's been improvements made, but have to be kind of careful about how we set our thermostats. I think there's people out there that'll set their baseboards pretty high, and then your mini split is no longer sort of your primary heating source and your most efficient heating source. So you can get situations where you have these two systems that are competing. And then first of all, you're not being efficient with your energy usage, so you're paying more, but also you don't see the same results in your participation in the demand response events as well. And then largely, I think there's more education that needs to happen around this. I think there's definitely benefit to leaving a mini split in heating mode over the winter here rather than auto mode. I mean, it's the user's preference, but there's certainly savings there. And I think as well, just understanding the benefits of setting set points for your baseboard versus your heat pump is really important as well. So a couple of things I guess we'll leave you with here. So we see mini split heat pumps as a huge opportunity in EcoShift, and we'll continue looking to enroll new customers along with our other technologies, of course. I think the auto solution that Joey spoke about will have a large impact on the customers that are already enrolled and are looking to participate again this upcoming season. And then, a couple questions we would pose in terms of just generally to the audience, I guess, as well, is how do we recruit more primary source heat pumps? So as Sarah mentioned, there's homes where we don't control the mini split heat pump, but the heat pump is still the primary heat source. So that's an opportunity right there to get those potential customers signed up for EcoShift and start seeing some incentives and some cost savings. And then finally, and this is, I guess, like sort of a broader issue potentially, but how do we optimize dispatch over other heat sources? So people have different heat sources in their homes. As Ryan mentioned, it could be an electric boiler, furnace, natural gas, and then electric sources as well. And there's a way to kind of, it would be nice if there was a perfect solution where you could just say, okay, here's this magic box that's going to optimize all your heat sources and help you save money. But I think in the near term, we'll start to see more control solutions around that, where you're balancing not just pricing, but also making sure the customer maintains the level of comfort that they need. So that's it for our presentation. Thanks for being with us, and I'd like to open it up for any questions. Yes.
Have you used central ducted heat pumps?
There are some central ducted heat pumps in the program. They're, I would say, much less common, but there are some in the program, and you would get incentives for it as well. Yeah. Yes. Oh, sorry.
Are any other controllers available, or MYSA is the only one?
There's several OEMs. So Sonope, Honeywell, Ecobee. There's several smart thermostats that are available. We've worked a lot with MYSA, and they've been they've been a great partner along with Clear Result in delivering this program. But there are other OEMs as well. Yeah.
Why so few level 2 chargers? Do they not play well, or they don't want to update their software?
What we see, I guess, generally is the EVs themselves, and this is a little challenging, but from manufacturer to manufacturer, some of them kind of have different levels of access to data, permissions, those sorts of things. I wouldn't say it's been really standardized across the industry. In terms of the chargers themselves, I think the chargers are a little maybe further behind in terms of offering, like, at least we just don't see the same uptake of smart chargers compared to like a regular charger. So I think it's a factor of probably maybe 100 of like EVs in the program versus the chargers themselves. And I think we'll start to see more chargers, but I think it'll take some time. Yeah, sorry, you'd had a question. Yeah.
One is the devices that you're connecting to your grid. Do you encourage your products as well open source software protocols, so with a language that's being spoken between the product and the grid, it can rename, even if that company happens to go on a business or some merger happens and they don't maintain their software anymore, just so that it's not a stranded asset. And then my second question is, does Nova Scotia Power offer anything, or has there been anything on folks that have solar and then they're generating excess solar, some sort of feed-in tariff to kind of help this situation where you're looking to smooth out your load?
Yeah.
Do you want me to answer the first one?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So I can say from like a program perspective, the Clear Result at least works quite closely with the DERMS platform providers that are connecting with the OEMs. As a matter of process, we make sure that we have up-to-date lists of those devices, serial numbers, all of that. So if something like that were to happen, we'd work closely with the OEMs to make sure those devices were identified and could be transferred over to a new DERMS platform provider. We've done transfers before, not necessarily because a platform provider disappeared, but it is something that we've supported in the past, and we have enough information in order to support that transfer. The limiting factor is whether or not the OEM is integrated with the other DERMS platform provider. So that would be the one limiting factor. Yeah.
I think your second question was related to open source. Oh, that was the first? Yeah. I guess I did have a quick comment on the open source side. One of the things we've seen a bit about, or there's been some research on, is I think it's CTA 2045, which is, if you're aware, it's like an open ADR. So it's basically a demand response protocol that's largely been standardized. And you start to see this with some of the heat pump water heaters, even smart sort of standard hot water heaters as well. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there to try to use open source technologies for sure. And sorry, remind me again what your second question was.
I was just curious to know about folks that have solar panels. Whether there is a program or whether there's a program maybe thought about where those folks could feed in their excess generation, maybe they're feeding it into the grid just as it comes, like the excess, and then that's being stored in a centralized battery system of some sort, or that's those folks where they generate excess solar and they have some sort of battery system on site, and then when you have an event, that excess could be pushed into the grid to support the load surges.
Yeah, absolutely. So Nova Scotia Power's net metering program, I can speak a bit about this because my parents have solar and they're net metered as well. You're only allowed to install as much solar as your use for the year. But yeah, through that net meter, like it is a bidirectional meter, so you can see power flow kind of both ways. In terms of pairing it with demand response, I do think there's a lot of opportunity there, and especially with batteries in the future, with battery prices coming down even more. We do have some home batteries in the program, and I think that'll continue to grow. And EVs are obviously a really good opportunity as well. It's essentially a large battery that's available. But yeah, I think, so one of the things Efficiency, actually the research and innovation team is working on is a load flexibility pilot. So we're looking at different flexible technologies and seeing how we can unlock those to provide further grid benefits and make those technologies even more cost effective. So things like that store energy, like hot water controllers, batteries are really dispatchable. So you can imagine, like, in the future, if Nova Scotia Power, they anticipate or they forecast that there's a lot of demand coming, they would be able to dispatch maybe thousands or tens of thousands of these devices and count on a certain number of megawatts that they can actually reduce. And obviously that provides a ton of benefit in terms of just making electricity cheaper, like the peak demand periods are really expensive. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Yep, no problem. Any other questions, comments, ideas? Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.